Have you ever wondered how Victorian women managed to use the bathroom while wearing dresses that could span 6 feet wide? Imagine being trapped in a cage of steel hoops covered in 20 pounds of fabric and lace, trying to handle the most basic human need without destroying your elaborate outfit or your reputation. Today, we're diving into one of history's most fascinating and carefully hidden secrets: the incredibly complex toilet routines of Victorian women and the ingenious solutions they developed to survive in their architectural marvels of fashion. Welcome to the wonderfully complicated world of Victorian fashion, where women didn't just wear dresses, they wore structures. These garments weren't just outfits, they were feats of engineering. Hidden beneath all the lace, layers, and steel was a daily challenge most of us would never imagine. Picture this. You're wrapped in yards of fabric, tightly laced into a corset that squeezes your waist and restricts your breathing. You're walking through hallways with skirts that stretch nearly 6 feet wide. Every step is carefully calculated. Sitting requires a strategic plan, and through it all, you're expected to look effortlessly graceful. The real question is, how did Victorian women handle bathroom breaks in these towering towers of tulle and steel? To answer that, we need to start at the beginning of a typical day in a Victorian woman's life, getting dressed. It wasn't just a matter of slipping on a gown. It was a process that could take hours and required assistance. The first layer was a thin linen shift. This was worn next to the skin and acted like a protective barrier, keeping the more expensive outer garments clean. It was practical and essential, as washing delicate fabrics was a major undertaking and not done frequently. Next came the corset, the defining piece of Victorian fashion. Tightly laced and reinforced with stays, it shaped the torso and dramatically narrowed the waist. Some women wore them so regularly and so tightly that their rib cages actually adapted to the pressure. Breathing deeply? Not really an option. Then came layer after layer of petticoats. These weren't just for warmth or modesty. They helped build volume, turning the dress into a bell-like shape. Some women wore 5, 6, even 7 layers. Each one added bulk and made moving around that much more of a challenge. But the crown jewel of this entire setup was the crinoline. The crinoline was a kind of structure, an actual frame made of steel hoops connected by fabric tapes, worn under the dress to hold it out in that iconic circular shape. At its largest, a crinoline could span up to 6 feet in diameter. Imagine trying to walk through a doorway with that, let alone fit into a chair. These structures were so expansive that some furniture had to be redesigned just to accommodate them. Chairs with no arms, specially widened benches, and extra space at dining tables all came into use just to allow women to sit down without collapsing their fashion. Now imagine wearing all of this day in and day out and trying to deal with regular tasks like using the bathroom. The sheer volume and weight of the garments meant that even simple actions required careful strategy and physical coordination. Victorian women weren't just dressed to impress. They were navigating a constant logistical maze, turning basic needs into complex routines carried out with patience, grace, and astonishing cleverness. Victorian women didn't just wear fashion, they inhabited it. Their clothing was so structured and layered that it transformed their entire approach to everyday life, especially when it came to personal care and hygiene. Using the bathroom wasn't just a task, it was a carefully orchestrated performance. The simplest of human needs had to be managed within a framework of lace, steel, and social expectations. At the center of it all was a single object that became an unsung hero of daily survival: the chamber pot. But these weren't crude containers tucked under beds. No, they were thoughtfully designed, especially for women navigating elaborate clothing. The most common type was oval-shaped with a smooth, curved interior, perfectly shaped to fit beneath the layers of crinoline, petticoats, and lace. Some of the higher-end versions even came with tight-fitting lids. These weren't just for controlling odor. They acted as subtle signals to household staff. A closed lid meant ready to be emptied, all without a word being spoken. In wealthier homes, the chamber pot was cleverly hidden. Elegant furniture served double duty: chairs with secret compartments, cabinets with concealed containers, and beautiful wooden commodes that masked their real function with expert craftsmanship. These were pieces of both necessity and art. Behind the scenes, the household staff moved with precision and silence, keeping everything clean and discreet. Their job required more than efficiency. It called for timing, coordination, and absolute discretion. You could think of them as the backstage crew of a very delicate, very refined performance. Now let's talk logistics. A Victorian woman couldn't simply lift up her skirts and be done with it. We're talking about up to 20 pounds of fabric and structure, a literal cage of steel hoops and stitched elegance. She had to master a technique that was part choreography, part mechanical know-how. The key was all about positioning. The chamber pot would be carefully placed beneath the layers, and through subtle body adjustments and strategic fabric arrangement, the entire process could be completed without removing a single piece of clothing. No zippers, no buttons, just posture control and an incredible sense of balance. At formal gatherings, things became even more refined. Large homes and ballrooms included retiring rooms, spaces specifically designed for women to step away and refresh. These rooms weren't empty powder rooms. They were fully staffed lounges where maids worked like a support team, assisting with skirt placement, timing, and cleanup, all while maintaining the appearance of total grace and discretion. This wasn't just functionality, it was an art form. The ability to handle a complex private need without disturbing one's appearance or drawing attention was a skill women cultivated, passed down, and quietly perfected. They moved through their days like stage performers, always poised, always graceful, even while navigating what was in reality a small miracle of coordination. But here's a twist that might just surprise you. For much of the Victorian period, many women didn't wear what we would today recognize as underwear, at least not in the traditional sense. The sheer bulk and structure of their skirts were considered sufficient coverage, and in the beginning, it wasn't seen as necessary to wear another layer beneath it all. It may sound like the setup to a comedy, but for Victorian women, it was a very real problem. Imagine strolling down a busy cobblestone street, your crinoline catching a gentle breeze, only to have that breeze turn into a gust. In an instant, the entire structure could flip upwards, much like an umbrella turning inside out. And with no traditional undergarments in place, well, let's just say discretion could disappear in a flash. These unexpected fashion mishaps became so common that society had to reconsider what counted as modest. The result was a small but revolutionary garment: split drawers. Now, these weren't like the underwear we know today. Split drawers were essentially two separate pant legs joined only at the waistband, with an open seam in the middle. It was a clever solution to a very real problem. These garments provided coverage and modesty when walking or sitting, but thanks to their open design, they allowed women to manage their personal needs without removing layers of clothing. It was a brilliant innovation. Modesty and practicality rolled into one. With split drawers, Victorian women could retain their layered elegance while navigating the complex routine of using a chamber pot, all with less effort and more confidence. The design caught on quickly, especially among the upper class and those attending formal events where bathroom logistics were even more delicate. But this was only one of many adaptations that helped women maintain composure amid layers of fabric, tight corsetry, and public expectation. Managing everyday life in Victorian clothing took more than grace. It took careful planning, silent communication, and an understanding of one's wardrobe on a near architectural level. And all of this was done quietly, behind the scenes, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Keeping oneself fresh and hygienic beneath layers of fabric wasn't just about comfort, it was about dignity, especially in a society where appearances mattered almost more than anything. But without the convenience of modern plumbing or disposable products, women had to rely on a range of clever and sometimes surprising methods. Let's start with the basics. Toilet paper. As we know, it simply wasn't widely available for most of the Victorian era. Instead, people used whatever was practical and nearby. For working-class families, this might have meant pages torn from newspapers, catalogs, or recycled paper. In rural areas, natural materials like soft leaves or cloth rags did the job. In wealthier households, however, the approach was a bit more refined. Soft linen cloths cut into small squares were the preferred solution. These reusable cloths were washed carefully, along with the household laundry. They offered a more comfortable and luxurious option and were considered a mark of gentility. Yet another reminder of how deeply class shaped even the most personal routines. Speaking of laundry, this was no small task. Victorian dresses were grand, layered, and often made of delicate materials that couldn't be washed frequently. Instead, the outer garments were maintained with brushing, airing, and powders to absorb oils and prevent odor. It was the inner layers, like linen shifts, chemises, and those clever split drawers, that bore the brunt of everyday wear. These were washed more regularly, serving as a protective shield for the intricate and costly dresses worn on top. But what about during menstruation? Victorian women faced this monthly challenge without modern sanitary products and within the confines of steel frames, corsets, and layers of fabric. Their solution? A homemade cloth system, often referred to as a belt and pad arrangement. A soft belt worn around the waist held absorbent material in place, usually made from flannel, cotton, or other soft fabrics available at home. Some women even used natural fillers like moss or wool. Changing these materials required privacy, timing, and expertise. And while there's little written about it, because it was rarely spoken of, women often changed their cloths many times a day. It was a discreet routine, performed with impressive coordination, often while continuing to fulfill social obligations or household duties. This entire system was built on silent cooperation and learned technique. Mothers taught daughters, ladies' maids offered assistance, and entire homes were structured to accommodate these private needs without disturbing the surface calm of polite society. And still, Victorian women carried themselves with elegance and poise, navigating these hidden complexities with a quiet strength that was nothing short of extraordinary. The secret toilet routines of Victorian women reveal far more than just clever solutions to practical problems. They show us the incredible resilience and ingenuity of women who refused to let even the most restrictive clothing stop them from living full, active lives. These women didn't just adapt to their circumstances, they innovated. They created systems, developed techniques, and built networks of support that allowed them to maintain their dignity and grace while managing challenges we can barely imagine today. From the carefully designed chamber pots to the revolutionary split drawers, from the silent coordination of household staff to the architectural considerations of entire homes, every aspect of Victorian society was shaped by the need to accommodate women's elaborate clothing and the complex routines it required. What strikes me most about this story is how much was accomplished through quiet cooperation and unspoken understanding. These weren't topics discussed in polite society, yet somehow knowledge was passed down, innovations were shared, and entire systems were developed to support women in their daily lives. The next time you see a Victorian painting or photograph of a woman in her elaborate dress, remember, she's not just wearing a beautiful gown. She's demonstrating mastery over one of history's most complex wardrobe systems, carrying herself with grace while navigating challenges that required the skills of an engineer, the timing of a performer, and the strength of someone who refused to let anything, not even 20 pounds of steel and fabric, limit her life. Their secret routines may have been hidden from history books, but their ingenuity, determination, and quiet strength deserve to be remembered and celebrated. These women turned necessity into art, obstacles into innovations, and constraints into opportunities for extraordinary grace.